Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the microscopic world that is literally holding you together right now. It's this biological scaffolding that's absolutely essential for life. But you know what? Most of us have never even heard of it. So let's get right into it. Seriously, have you ever thought about this? I mean, you're made of something like 37 trillion individual cells. So what's stopping all of them from just becoming a puddle on the floor? What's the magic trick that organizes them into your heart, your skin, your bones, into you? Well, the answer is one of the most important and, honestly, most overlooked parts of our entire biology. Okay, so let me introduce you to the hero of our story, the extracellular matrix, or ECM for short. Now, what is it? It's this incredibly complex 3D network of proteins and sugars that your own cells pump out. It's like a mix of biological mortar holding everything together, communication cables sending signals, and structural beams giving everything shape, all rolled into one. This is the stuff that tells cells where to go and what to do. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that without it, complex life, like us, just wouldn't exist. It's that important. All right, so here's what we've got on the agenda. First, we're going to get a handle on this hidden scaffolding. Then, we'll meet the molecular all-stars that build the thing. We're going to spend some quality time with collagen. It's the undisputed MVP. After that, we'll check out its wild assembly line. And finally, we'll see what happens when it all goes wrong. So first up, let's look at the big picture. You have to understand, the ECM isn't just some boring, inert filler space between your cells. No way. It's a super active, dynamic environment. It's the reason our cells can stick together and form tissues, sure, but it's also a massive signaling hub. It's constantly telling cells when to grow, when to move, and even what they should become. And the more complex an animal is, the more important this whole system gets. And get this, the ECM is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Its architecture is incredibly diverse. In some spots, like right under your skin, it forms a thin sheet called the basal lamina that anchors everything down. In other places, it's a rock-hard, calcified matrix that makes up your bones and teeth. It can even be perfectly transparent, which is what allows you to see through the cornea of your eye. Or it can form these ridiculously strong rope-like structures in your tendons. That's what lets you run and jump. This adaptability is really its secret weapon. Okay, so what is this stuff actually made of? Who are the molecules doing all this heavy lifting? Let's meet the main cast of characters in this biological construction crew. Each one is a specialist with a very specific job. The best way to think about it is with analogies. You've got collagen, that's your steel rebar, giving everything massive tensile strength, so it doesn't tear apart. Then there's elastin, which is basically the body's bungee cords. It lets tissues stretch and then snap right back into place. It's why your skin is so elastic when you're young, and why it's not so much later on. Then you have proteoglycans. Think of these as a squishy, gel-like padding that soaks up water and resists compression. And finally, you've got molecules like fibronectin and laminin. These guys are the superglue, sticking cells to the matrix and sticking all the parts of the matrix together. Now, to really get how this whole matrix is built, we're going to zero in on its most famous component. I'm talking about collagen. Seriously, if you've heard of any protein in the ECM, it's going to be this one. And for good reason. It's by far the most abundant protein, not just in you, but in the entire animal kingdom. It's a true superstar. And just to give you a sense of scale here, scientists know of at least 27 different types of collagen, right? But just one of them, type 1, makes up a whopping 90% of all the collagen in your body. 90%. It is the primary building block for your skin, your bones, and your tendons. It's everywhere. So what's its secret? How is it so strong? Well, it's all about the architecture. The basic unit is just a single protein chain, but it has this special repeating code. Every third amino acid is something called glycine, which happens to be the smallest amino acid there is. And because it's so small, it allows 3 of these chains to wind around each other. I mean, super tightly, forming this incredible right-handed triple helix. It's basically a molecular rope, and that's where all that amazing strength comes from. Now, you don't build something this complex and strong by accident. Oh no, it takes a really sophisticated, multi-step assembly line. And what's really cool is that it starts inside the cell, but it only finishes outside the cell. It's a total marvel of cellular engineering. So let's walk through how it works. Okay, so here's the high-level view. It starts when the genetic code for the collagen chain gets read. and the chain is fed into this cellular factory called the endoplasmic reticulum. Inside, there's a bunch of crucial edits and upgrades that happen, one of which, called hydroxylation, is super important, and we'll come back to it. Then, 3 of these upgraded chains twist together to form a precursor molecule called procollagen. This gets packaged up, shipped out of the cell, and only then are its ends snipped off, which allows the finished molecules to self-assemble into these massive, strong fibrils. All right, let's zoom in on one of those key upgrade steps that happens inside the cell, because there is a secret ingredient, something that is absolutely non-negotiable if you want to make strong collagen. And I promise you've heard of it. The process is called hydroxylation. Basically, an enzyme comes along and sticks a little hydroxyl group, that's an oxygen and a hydrogen, onto some of the amino acids in the chain. It sounds like a tiny change, but believe me, this small tweak is everything. It allows the chain to form extra hydrogen bonds, which act like tiny little molecular staples, locking that triple helix together and making it stable. Now, the enzyme that does this job, it needs a helper, a cofactor. And here it is, the big reveal. That essential cofactor is vitamin C. Yep, good old vitamin C. Without it, that hydroxylation step just fails. The triple helix still forms, but it's weak, it's unstable. In fact, it literally falls apart. It denatures at body temperature. And that is the molecular reason for the disease scurvy. You know, what pirates used to get. All those horrible symptoms, bleeding gums, weak skin, wounds that won't heal, it all comes down to the body being unable to make stable collagen. And check this out. This is just a brilliant piece of biological engineering. Remember how I said the final assembly happens outside the cell? There's a great reason for that. The precursor molecule, procollagen, has these little protective caps on its ends that keep it from sticking together. The cell safely ships it out, and then, once it's outside, other enzymes come along and snip those caps off. It's a safety feature. It stops the cell from accidentally clogging its own plumbing with its own scaffolding. How clever is that? Okay, so we've seen the incredible process of how this protein gets built. But what happens when there's a glitch in that microscopic assembly line? Well, the consequences are anything but microscopic. They can affect the entire body in some really profound ways. There are actually a number of really devastating genetic disorders that are all caused by faulty collagen. For example, in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, it's often the enzymes that process the collagen that are defective. In osteogenesis imperfecta, the problem is mutations in the actual genes for type 1 collagen. And then there's a disease called epidermolysis bullosa, where mutations mess with the special anchoring collagens that are supposed to pin our skin layers together. And these tiny genetic defects lead to some very real and very difficult symptoms. Ehlers-Danlos can cause things like hyperflexible joints and really fragile skin. Osteogenesis imperfecta, well, it's known as brittle bone syndrome, which pretty much says it all. And epidermolysis bullosa is sometimes called butterfly skin because the skin is so fragile that even the slightest touch can cause it to blister, all because those skin layers just aren't anchored down. That's the real-world impact when your body's scaffolding is weak. So really, the main thing to take away from all this is that this invisible network, this extracellular matrix, is the absolute foundation of our visible health. I mean, everything from how strong your bones are to how well your skin holds together, it's all built on top of this remarkable biological scaffold. But that leaves us with one last question to chew on. We've just spent all this time talking about what happens when the matrix is too weak. But what about the opposite? What happens if the cells go into overdrive and start making too much of it? Well, that's a whole other can of worms, but it's a key part of what goes wrong in things like tissue fibrosis, scarring, and even the spread of cancer.